No other event had a greater effect on modern popular culture than Beatlemania. It permeated every level of society on a global scale. The Fab Four were demigods to an entire generation. It has been 30 years since the Beatles first burst upon the popular music scene, but nothing, it seems, can diminish our fascination with them. They revolutionized the dress, hairstyles, attitudes, and beliefs of an entire generation. And their impact on the lives of fans born even after they disbanded is powerful as well. Unlike almost anyone else who made their mark as popular entertainers, the Beatles were unique in their ability to so accurately funnel their life experience into both their music and engaging public statements. As armchair philosophers, the Fab Four weren't bad, honestly shoveling their hard-won perceptions year after year into everything they did. In comparison to today's self-involved crop of empty-headed crooners, John, Paul, George, and even Ringo have generally had something interesting to say. As George Harrison once commented when asked why the so-called current potentate pop stars didn't really impart too much of importance in their music anymore, he reeled off, "Because they don't know anything, do they?" Apart from the marvelous music, the boys had quite a lot of interest to say as well. Remember John's headline-grabbing bet-ins? Paul's public statements on the relative merits of all natural LSD, or George's stint as the materially exhausted wannabe Hare Krishna? All things considered, the Beatles were really quite wonderful geezers, rank amateurs as aspiring gods, but insightful musicians with open hearts and minds to match. Here then is an evening's worth of entertainment of the really fine things the Beatles and their friends have had to say over the last 30 years on such varied subjects as God, drugs, music, their acrimonious breakup, and even themselves. This collection of interviews with the Fabs and their mate is the end result of years of peeking in on the Beatles' turbulent lives through any window I could find. Musical geniuses that they obviously were, the Beatles were terrific with the media. When out on the road playing their manic 20-minute concerts, the Beatles generally sat down and talked to the media at each stop. Here's a brief example.
We're visiting with 4 young men, and if I just mention their first names, such as Paul and George and Ringo and John, I doubt if you'd know about whom we're speaking. But if I said we're here this afternoon with the Beatles, and if we were in England, I think we'd get a great big rousing hurrah, wouldn't we, boys?
Oh, yeah.
Well, let's see. We have, to my right here, we have Paul McCartney. Now, within the past year, you have mushroomed and tremendously almost out of sight in such popularity. What was the click? What levered this great rage for the Beatles?
Well, it's funny, really, now you mentioned that. But I think it was the Palladium show, you know, the television show in England, and then following hot in the footsteps, and we had the Royal Variety Command Variety performance. It's difficult to say that, actually. No, Royal Variety Command performance for the Queen Mother, you know. Mm-hmm. And it all came up from there, really. The national newspapers got hold of it, and they got hold of Ringo, you know. And Mike Brown found about it, yeah. A lot of things, you know, a lot of columnists and things got onto the idea and started calling it Beatlemania.
Well, let's ask Ringo here. Now, you're the drummer. We caught your act at the Olympia the other evening. How long have you been beating those skins?
Oh, about 5 years now. I've been with the boys about 18 months now. I've been with other groups before that. But that's 5 years.
Since you boys have gained your current popularity, have there been many other organizations trying to imitate you or perhaps take the thunder away from you? Let's ask John Lemon this.
Well, I suppose a couple of people have jumped on the railway carriage, I mean the bandwagon, but it doesn't really matter, you know, because it's flattery and it sort of promotes the whole idea
of us, if we're away and there's a few little Beatles still going, it'll remind people of us.
Well, Paul, let's go back to you for a moment. When anyone ever sees your pictures, the first thing that strikes them is naturally your hairdo. You've been referred to, or her don't. Yeah. Some people have written as though you were having the sheepdog cut, or perhaps an early Caesar. What do you call it, and how come you cut it that way?
Well, you know, Bob, to us it just sort of seems a natural thing, really, because it all arose this. We came out of the swimming baths one day, and you know, your hair sort of flops about after the swimming baths. Well, it stayed that way, you see, with nobody bothered to comb it. Mm-hmm. And it sort of stayed in a style, so we've never really called it anything. I don't know, until the papers got hold of it, and they called it the Beatle style, so you know, I suppose we go along with them now, really.
Do you go to the barber at all?
Well, you know, now and then, and do and don't.
Just to keep it trimmed, huh?
Yeah, just to keep it trimmed, but sometimes we do it ourselves, you know. Yeah, the other thing is that it's really only our eyebrows that are growing upwards.
Well, we've been told that in England today there's this Beatlemania going on. Now, what do you describe? What would you say Beatlemania is? That all the girls scream whenever they see you, and they perhaps faint waiting in line. Let's be immodest a moment. What is the attraction, huh?
I don't know. I mean, I think it's that dressing gown. George's dressing gown is definitely a big attraction.
No, yeah, I don't think any of us really know what it is. We've been asked this question an awful lot of times, but we've never been able to come up with an answer yet, because I think it's a collection of so many different things, like happening to be there at the right time, at the right moment, at the wrong place. No, but a little bit of originality in the songs, a little bit of a different sound. I don't know, it's an awful lot of things, maybe the gimmick of the haircut as well, the look, getting into the national press at the right time. So it's an awful lot of luck.
All these things and more.
Well, you mentioned songs. Now, I understand you boys write your own material?
John and I write them. This is Paul speaking. John and I write.
Paul, yes. Well, how do you think of an idea? Do you get together regularly, or an idea pops in your mind, you say, let's sit down and do it?
If an idea does pop in your mind, then you do sit down and say, let's do it, yeah. But if there's no ideas, and say we've been told we've got a recording date from about 2 days' time, then you have got to sit down and sort of slug it out. But you normally get, first of all, just a little idea, which doesn't seem bad. And you go on, and then it builds up from that. It varies every time, though, really, you know.
Well, Paul, we've seen you here at the Olympia. Can you compare the French audience with what you're familiar with back in England?
Well, there's a lot of difference, because in England, you see, the audience is a 75% female. Here, 75% male. And that's the main difference, really, because they still appreciate it, but you don't get the full noise and the atmosphere of a place.
No screams.
No screams and fainting. Why is it 75% boys?
I don't know, but I think they don't let the girls out at night in France. One of the reasons.
I think it's your dressing gown.
Somebody said that they still have to have chaperones, a lot of them, you see. Whereas in England they're out, you know, the boys, like, yeah, and it's funny, it's the same in Germany. All the boys, you know, like the rock, and you know, it's usually the same on the continent. I don't really know why.
Well, Paul, we see the I Want to Hold Your Hand as #1 on the hit parade, and we have a copy of it here right now. So let's sit back for a moment and listen to it. How did you come to write that, I Want to Hold Your Hand?
Let's see. We were told, this was one of the songs that we were told we definitely had to get down to it, we had to get working. So we went and we found, it was an old disused house that we found, and we were just sort of walking along with it. And we just thought, we've got to really get this song going. So we got down in the basement of this disused house, and there was an old sort of piano there. It wasn't really disused, the house, sort of rooms to let. We found this old piano, and we started banging away there. And we stayed there, and there was a little old organ there too. So we were just having this sort of informal jam session down there, and we started banging away. And suddenly, just a little bit came to us. I think it was just sort of the Cats line, and so we started working on it from there. And we got our pens and paper out, and we just wrote the lyrics down. And eventually, we had some sort of a song. So we went back and we played it over to our recording manager. And he seemed to like it, so we recorded it the next day.
Do all your songs have a basic theme or story or message?
No.
Well, that's a
quick answer. They don't. But there's one thing that nearly always seems to run through our songs. People always point it out to us. That's the I and you and me always seems to be in the title. I want to hold your hand, she loves you, and love me do, and things like this. Well, I think the reason for that really is that we nearly always try and write songs which are a little bit more personal than others, you see. So by having these prepositions, wherever you call them, I and me and you, in the titles, makes the songs a little bit more personal. But I think that's the only sort of basic message that does run through our songs.
And you coined this, yeah, yeah, yeah. Isn't that really sweeping England right now? The phrasing, yeah, 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 on all the songs?
Yeah, well, that was the sort of main catchphrase from She Loves You. But we stuck that on, we'd written the song nearly, and then we suddenly needed more, so we had yeah, yeah, yeah. And it caught on, they used it for, if you're going to be with it or hip.
It's sort of a trademark for you boys now.
Yeah, we'll have to write another song with it.
Well, Paul, what do you think of your trip to the States? I understand in about a week or 10 days you're going to be on the Ed Sullivan Show. Could you tell us about it?
Yeah, that's right. We're going to do Ed Sullivan Show in New York, and we're taping one for later release sort of thing. And we're looking forward to those. Then we go down to Florida, Miami. Can't wait. And we do another Ed Sullivan there. But I think before that we do a Carnegie Hall, don't we? Yeah. We're playing on Carnegie Hall.
How were you selected for Ed Sullivan? Was he in England and caught your act or something?
Well, when we were flying back, this is the story we heard. We were arriving from Stockholm into London Airport, and at the same time the Prime Minister and the Queen Mother were also flying out, but the airport was just overrun with teenagers. There was thousands of them waiting for us to get back, and Ed Sullivan was supposed to have arrived at that time and wondered what was going on, and he found out it was us arriving. And also our manager went over to the States with another singer called Billy J. Kramer, and he did a couple of TV shows over there, and while he was over there, our manager got the bookings with Ed Sullivan. But he'd also heard of us from this London airport thing, and that's about it.
And how about a movie? Is there a movie in the future?
Yeah. We've been asked by United Artists to do a feature movie.
Will it be dramatic or just strictly wrapped around your singing?
No, we don't know yet, really, what it's going to be like. I don't think we'll have to do an awful lot of acting. I think it'll be written around the sort of people that we are, and there'll be 4 characters in it, very like us.
Well, do you plan to compose 2 or 3 songs specifically for the film?
Actually, we've got to compose 6 songs specifically for the film. We've got to get down to that, too. That's a job.
Then you boys really haven't had much of a chance to see Paris, have you?
No, not really.
Not really, no.
What do you think of it so far?
Well, it's nice, quite nice,
How about the French girls compared to the British girls?
Oh, we haven't seen any yet.
John?
Yeah, well, I'm married. Didn't notice them.
Oh, we'll go back to Paul then.
Yeah, I think they're great.
Oh, you're single.
Yeah, well, I think the French girls are fabulous. Yeah.
But we have seen more French boys than French girls, so I mean, you know, we can't really tell.
Well, perhaps when you get to the Ed Sullivan Show, there'll be more girls for you.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Any of you been to America before?
Yeah, me. I went in September just for a holiday for 3 weeks.
Just George Harrison. Well, I see our time is up, boys, and thank you very much, Beatles, for being our guest.
Tony Mansfield, Billy J. Kramer's erstwhile drummer, looks back on the manic heyday of Beatlemania.
Pete Best. Dead nice guy. Can't play the drums though. I didn't think so anyway. I'm sorry, Pete, if you ever hear this. But it's the truth. Dead nice person, gentleman. Didn't fit in with the Beatles. Didn't play enough. You know, he wasn't tasteful. You know, he didn't play enough. Maybe afterwards he became a better drummer, but he certainly wasn't. I didn't think his drumming. I'm talking as a drummer now about another drummer. I didn't think he did the job properly. And but as a person he was fabulous, dead nice guy. I liked him. First Beatle I ever saw, well actually he wasn't a Beatle, he was Ringo Starr or Richard Starkey. I met him in 1961 in the summer when he was playing at Pethelli. Oh, Richie and I used to be quite friendly. You know, I think drummers usually are. And I always liked his playing. I used to watch him play a lot. He was playing at Butlin's holiday camp for Rory Storm. He was the drummer with Rory Storm and the Hurricanes. And they were working in the Rock and Calypso bar every night with Rory. And the next time I met Richie was a couple of years later at the Cavern when we just finished doing a lunchtime session on our own. And I was packing my drums up, and they were, in fact, that photograph you've seen in the Sunday Times with me taking my drums down, not putting them up, I was taking them down. They were having publicity photographs done for the Beatles, and I saw the back of Richie, and he had these knitting needles for sticks. And I says, "What the bloody hell have you got them for?" He says, "Well, I play too loud, so they told me I should use lighter sticks," you know. And I said, "Who are you playing for now?" You know, because I said, "Which band are you playing in?" She says, I'm playing in the Beatles. First time I saw the Beatles play wasn't with Richie, it was with Pete Best. It was at the Cavern. They were doing a lunchtime session. And we'd heard about the Beatles because we'd played at the Lowlands Club in West Derby, just outside Liverpool. And we saw a photograph of them. And I remember the comment we all made was, "Oh, he's got an old Premier kit, and oh, look at that funny bass he's got, you know, that Hofner basses, you know," which, you know, they look different. You know, we were all into wearing suits and all looking clean shaven like Cliff Richard and the Shadows. We modelled ourselves onto that. They were playing to the fans, you know, and they dressed like the fans. They were, you know, I think very artistic through John and Stuart Sutcliffe's and with Astrid, of course, you know, with those photographs she did with them. With Stuart had a lot to do with their hairstyle and the way they dressed, you know, to be underground, bohemian. So we used to have all the Dolites, the people that used to sit at the front, you know, the regulars, you know. Right. And we felt very honoured to play at the Cavern because we were from Manchester. And I always remember my mother and father saying when I came home after working the Cavern, they always knew I'd been to Liverpool because they could smell the Cavern on me because they used this like disinfectant stuff, you know. And I used to sweat like a pig, you know. And you could always smell it on your clothes when you got home, you know. Right. But they were hard days, and I must admit I really enjoyed playing at the Cavern. The fans were great, you know, they were very receptive to us, and we had to work very hard. Once we joined Billy J. Kramer and had John and Paul write Do You Want to Know a Secret? Well, they didn't write it specifically for Billy J. Kramer. In fact, the J came through John Lennon. John suggested they put J there. Billy Jesus Kramer, I think, was the rationale behind it. But we kept it down to J. I think that was definitely John's idea. We started working a lot with the Beatles, basically because Brian was now wanting to put the boys on the road, and he had Jerry and the Pacemakers, ourselves, the Big Three, Tommy Quickly, Johnny Sandon and the Remo Four, then Cilla Black. You know, he started getting a real, you know, good stable together. it's very much like being in prison when you work with the Beatles on the road, or doing a theatre with them, because you can't go out of the theatre. You got to stay in, and you usually get in early, right? And we used to have police escort to bring us in and to take us out. They very much kept to themselves. They had to. They started going further away. The more famous they became. I think the last time we worked with them was the Beatle Christmas show, which was the end of '64, I think, right, at the Finsbury Park Empire. The kids were screaming, which was, it pissed you off actually, because you couldn't really. It didn't matter what you played, as soon as George, shook his head or Paul winked, or waved his hand, all the girls used to go crazy. The second record we did was written by John and Paul, who came down to the studio to EMI. We recorded in Studio 2. They had the lyrics written on the back of Senior Service packet. I never knew the record at all. The only record I'd ever done with Kramer, which I knew before I went in the studio, was Do You Want to Know a Secret? We learnt the song in the studio. We did the bedding tracks first of all, and then we had 4 records written by John and Paul for us. The first record was Do You Want to Know a Secret? The B-side is one of the first Lennon McCartney songs, which will be I'll Be On My Way, very much a Buddy Holly influence thing. The next song was Bad to Me, the second record, that was a monstrous hit for Billy. That was a gold. The B-side of that was I Call Your Name, which they later recorded themselves. On From a Window, Paul came down with John. I always remember John stood in front of me, singing, late yesterday night I had a shite out of a window. I remember him coming out with that, we're all laughing, and I remember at the end of the track I farted. George Martin was an extremely interesting person to work with, a great musician, great arranger, and, you respected the man. We had a lot. Same with Brian gave you that flair of, authority. Mr. Epstein, Epi, Brian. We all respected Brian very much. I remember Brian, used to get very annoyed at Billy, and we were doing Thank You Lucky Stars, and he'd come running in one day in Birmingham. We'd done. And Brian came in, and he looked at Billy, and he said, "The Dakotas were lovely." Oh, no, in his nice posh accent, he said, "The Dakotas were lovely. But you, Billy," and just did that and just steamed off out of the room like a little boy, And we were all dying to crack up, laughing, but you couldn't, Yeah. Sure, Brian was, gay, but we never really thought of him, as being gay. Brian was infatuated, and the Beatles were his life, I think Jerry Marsden and the Pacemakers, Billy J, ourselves. We worked. We were around at the right time, very much so, and jumped on the Beatle bandwagon. Why not? Why shouldn't I admit it? Yes, we were. We were talking about Paul McCartney, and I remember Paul coming in with some of the tracks, like I Saw Her Standing There, right? I remember him coming in talking about that, and he had an acetate of that, which we heard in Dick James's office, and then he played us From Me to You on the piano, and that was written also on a back of, I think it was Senior Service cigarettes. I'm not sure, something like that. I know it was a packet of cigarettes. He was reading the lyrics of, and banging on the old Giuliano. What do you think of this? No, piano wasn't really in tune either. They worked very hard. I remember doing a week in Llandudno with them, and they were rehearsing during the day at the theatre, because we were doing a variety show. I remember him borrowing my razor. He used to call it the rabbi because it made such a noise, like you're praying, And when we're on the road together, he says, "Can I use the rabbi, Tony?" Oh, yeah. He made such a row, an electric razor. They used to borrow makeup off us. We always used to put makeup on, Yeah. And because you had white faces, These are the days when we used to wear suits and everything.
Next is a lively Beatles press conference which took place in Kansas City in 1964.
I'll direct my question to Paul. Have the receptions in the United States been what you expected them to be or had hoped for?
They've been better, actually, because somebody told us they'd be good. Excuse me. Your move. Somebody said they'd be good, but these have been marvellous, fantastic.
What has pleased you most about the reception?
The bigness of them, the largeness.
The immenseness.
The magnitude.
The multitudinousness. Wonderful.
I asked the Beatles, was there any place in America that you wanted to see but did not get a chance to? Or were not having
New Orleans is one of them.
Yes?
I'd like to know, do you fellas hear what you're playing when the screens go on, and how do you get going together?
We've heard it before anyway.
It sounds louder to people who haven't been to the shows before. We're immune, you know.
Yes?
Fuzz.
Well, he was a very nasty young man.
Old man.
Pardon? Well, he'd been told to leave the place anyway, you see. And he insisted on jumping around trying to take pictures. And we couldn't see as it was without some idiot flashing in front of us. So I thought I'd baptize him.
It's assumed that you will sing for quite some time yet, but what do you plan to do after
The bubble burst.
breaking up as a group?
None of us made any plans, but John and I will probably we have this one every day, you know. John and I will probably carry on songwriting, and George will go into basketball.
Or roller skating. I haven't decided that.
Yes?
Would you show us your grey hair?
No.
Only if you show him
messing
yours.
it all up, you see. And we're on telly. You
What do you do about barber shops when you're on?
We never
We
go
don't
to
do
them
anything
anyway.
about them when we're not on
Don't even
tour.
think about them.
Is this the highest guarantee you've had in the United States?
I
Yes.
think so.
I think so,
Is
yeah.
it, Derek?
Yes.
Very high, really.
Highest ever in the world with the toe. Been up his toe, correct.
Did you talk
That's correct.
to Finley?
Back to the hairdo one, what care and treatments does the hair get?
It's a bit of combing,
washed
bit of
and
combing,
combed.
bit of washing.
Nothing special.
No treatment. We never put any hair oil on it because it makes it go funny, you see. It makes mine go funny.
We're from PICK in Springfield, Missouri, and it was rumored all over town a couple of days ago that you all had tried to get reservations to stay at one of the hotels in Springfield, and that you were turned down repeatedly. Is this true?
No.
Well, we don't make them anyway, and the ones that have turned us down, well, it's, you know, it's their privilege.
And we're not going to
But anyway,
Springfield
we're
anyway, you know, so we don't have a hotel there.
KUDL News, what is one question you would like to be asked at a press conference that probably nobody has ever asked you?
Can't think of one.
Oh, no.
I think everything's being asked.
George,
Yes.
whatever came of the car wreck that you had in London? Had an accident with someone.
Oh, it wasn't a wreck. I only just tapped into some fella and knocked the headlamp in. But you see, when the further away you are, the worse the damage appears, you see. I mean, over here, the car was a write-off, but actually it wasn't. And it was fixed within 3 days.
Did you have to pay anything?
No. The other fella's insurance company paid because it was his fault. I'm a good driver, so.
We wondered, considering making America your home, would you consider that?
No. Well,
No.
because England's our home, you know. We like the place, but not to live in.
How much of the hysteria that greets you do you feel is real, and how much is pretended by the little girls that adore you?
You can't tell. Doesn't matter.
There's a lot of it that the papers, help create. It's probably not real, but there's also a lot, I think.
What's the origin of the name Beatles? Why did you choose that?
John thought of
I
it.
just thought of it, you know, there was no reason. Same as you pick a name for anything. Really.
How does your wife feel about the girls screaming and running after you?
Oh, she knows they never catch me, so.
Ringo, are you going to have your tonsils taken out, and do you have that offer yet from the girl to send the tonsils to her?
Yeah, I'm going to have them out, and we got the telegram, but I don't think I'll give them to her.
We're going to auction them off.
It's disgusting.
We'd like to know if there was ever any truth to the rumor, John, that you might leave the group.
No. Don't know where it started, you know, it just sort of appeared somewhere.
We can't get rid of him anyway.
America, Australia.
Did you make any new records
You got it.
while you were in Hollywood?
No.
No.
We did do an album, but it was only for a souvenir.
It's not for general release.
It's not for sale. It was so terrible, that's why. Yeah.
After your return home, where will your next tour take you?
Around Britain.
We do a month's tour of Britain.
Is there anything you wanted to do in Kansas City on your visit here that you didn't get a chance to do? Anything particular that you wanted to see, or anyone you wanted to visit by any chance?
No, I didn't hear about anybody we know.
Mr.
So
Truman?
not particularly, no.
Have you bought any clothes in the United States, or what things you wear from the...
This American. This is a fellow described it on the radio yesterday as a typical Liverpool Dockers outfit, so got it in Key West.
Do you ever wear a tie?
Me? Yeah, when I can find it.
I've got one of
Never
his
find
suits.
my stuff.
John,
Oh, what?
I've got one of his suits.
Nothing.
What about
The British government.
Oh, they're getting a loss, you know.
We'll end up with about $10 when we get home.
Springfield? You're all writing books, but what are the subject matters?
No, John's the only one who writes.
We haven't learned yet.
Since your return to America this time, have you been asked to reappear on Ed Sullivan's program?
I believe so, yes. I'm not sure about that.
I don't think we've got time, though.
Yes, it hasn't been fitted in yet.
Well, it won't fit in now.
You were talking earlier that the two of you might continue on and the rest of you break up the act. Is there a date set for this, that you are going to break up?
No, all I meant was that if we do break up, he asked when we do break up, which it's got to happen, that John and I will probably carry on songwriting. We didn't mean singing or anything.
How long do you think that it will be before it does happen?
Another role with me.
No idea, really. Could happen tomorrow, you know, after the Kansas City days.
Here that we can know if you're doing the Playboy. Would any of you care to give us any of your views, I don't mean to be smart by this, by anything on religion or politics?
Well, we're not interested in either.
No, that's about it.
Would you consider, or is it being planned that a movie will be made of your whole life, school, having clubs?
No, they couldn't put that kind of thing on the screen. Not yet, anyway.
One of you, I can't remember which one, said that to you, politics, you didn't like politics. It was like beer. You didn't like the taste. Yet when you were in Chicago, you made the comment that if you were going to be for anyone in the presidential election, you'd be for LBJ.
We didn't. We said Eisenhower, actually.
No,
What about in your own country? You're going back to a general election campaign over there. The Tories have been pretty good.
We're not going to vote over there.
So the Labour.
Well, I don't know enough about it. That's why I'm not voting.
None of us do, you know.
We don't follow it, you know.
If I can find out which one takes the least tax, I'll vote for them.
In New Orleans, you met with Francis Domino. Could you tell me how that meeting came about and what occurred in that?
Frogman Henry said, you know, he'd try and arrange for us to meet him because we've always liked him. And he brought him round with a friend of his, and we just talked for about an hour and had a couple of shots taken for his kids.
Found him getting groceries in a store or something.
Had a sing-song with him.
Yeah, I lost it a year ago. I just get it back now, actually, for speeding 3 times. If they catch you 3 times, you lose it. And got caught.
Wasn't fast enough.
Why did you want to go to New Orleans? What about the town?
Well, it's
the clubs and that.
You know, you just hear about New
Hear the
Orleans.
sounds, man.
The music?
Yeah. Well, you know, it's all good clubs in them.
Any questions from the elder gentleman over there? Any of you? Yeah?
What is your reaction to these girls who come up to your hotel room and tear up sheets and anything that you've discarded, or the cigarette butts that you leave around?
Well, they do it after we leave. It's all right, you know, if the hotel manager
Don't
doesn't
go up there
mind.
ripping them while we're still asleep.
With all the girls chasing all over the world, who's probably the most exciting woman throughout the world?
Oh, Ringo's mother was pretty hot. Only joking,
Yeah, we like American cigarettes and we smoke filters. But we're not advertising anybody's cigarettes unless they're going to give us a few million free.
Do you do anything for free at all?
Yeah, charity shows, that's about all.
I'd like to ask George, I heard that in the Lafayette Hotel in Atlantic City, a girl had climbed 8 stories on the side of the building, jumped in the window and grabbed you in your nightclothes, and then was arrested.
No, it's untrue. I heard a noise in the next room, but it was just policemen chasing her around, and she jumped on Ringo, actually.
When that bird was running around the room, I was chasing her. No, he's not right. No, we haven't got a script writer or anything for the next movie yet. Unless they got one while we were away. We were told 83 yesterday.
85.
85, sorry.
Million?
Yeah. It's amazing, isn't it?
We're still touring.
What do you think with all the money you made?
Listen, yeah, we hear them every day on the radio.
I don't know.
With all the money that you made?
Nobody's made any
I'm
plans.
going to change all mine into cents, fill up a room and dive in it. Just going mad.
We were curious just how much money have you made?
None of us
We
know
don't
yet.
know yet.
A lot.
Our
We
accountant
have an
just deals
accountant.
with it, you know, nobody...
We can't find him at the moment. It's a lie.
Everywhere you go, you get tons of gifts, some good and some bad. Whatever becomes of all of this?
Some of them get shipped to England. If we get cakes and that, we try and get the fella who's promoting the show to give them to hospitals because we can't eat all that cake.
How about personal effects like jewelry and matters like...
Well, I've got a case full, man. You want to root through it, see what you like.
Just wanted to know.
I want to know about the schools and the poor fellas. Did they have any special musical training, musical background, college thing?
None of us can read or write music.
We're all
We've all been to
self-taught.
school, you know, I mean...
All self-taught.
Ordinary
Two lessons
education.
at school.
Oh, eh?
Which of you consider yourself the best singer or the best musician?
Ringo.
Well, I think John's the best.
No, I think you.
No, John.
We don't consider
He's
it.
got soul. No, I don't think any of us are very good. Really?
Mr. Gunter, have you a question?
Enough to get round in the Reaper barn in Hamburg.
I've a lot of traveling in the past years. I'd like to know, is there any particular place in the world that you like the most, you like to return to? Or do you still...
Britain.
England.
I'd return there.
On times off, I've read articles indicating that you visit children's hospitals. Have you visited any in America?
I've never visited one at all.
Well, there's a picture of you in one.
Well,
Children in the children's...
we've never been to one.
No, we
that
had
was
while we were making a film, they brought up a lot of orphans
It was at Easter.
Yeah, that's
to see
right.
us.
We didn't go there.
Don't normally have time.
Why?
To go to
We went to one hospital, I think, ages ago when some girl had hitchhiked to see us
Oh, yeah.
and somebody stabbed her on the way.
That's right, yes.
True.
With all your world travels, when do you have time for social activities?
When we're not touring. We don't tour all the time.
Around, you know.
About 3 more questions.
Only
We
talk
tour about half the year, you know.
As idols and rather impressionable youngsters, do you ever feel a heavy responsibility watching the conduct you have?
No. Only towards the press. It's the only time we watch it.
Are you as closely guarded in England as you are here?
When
On
we're on
tour.
tour. If we're not on tour, they just leave us alone.
Mr. Gunter.
Question.
What do you think of the American press?
They're quite fair.
They're all nice.
Except for you.
Except for you.
Can't stand you anymore.
He's a good
Keeps
friend,
winning
really.
the cards.
And one last one from you.
Paul, I noticed I saw pictures of your father, and I noticed that he has thinning hair.
Well, he's 65. What do you expect?
What will you do?
Let it thin, you know.
Yes.
Okay.
Counterculture entertainer Tiny Tim was much loved by all of the Beatles. Here he assesses the group's musical contribution in a rare interview in New York.
Before 1955, it was all straight melodic music. When the white man's rock and roll came in the 50s, it started to divert. But when the Beatles came on in 63, they started a new cult. They started the modern art of of popular music. In other words, it was something that you just couldn't buy a sheet music copy and learn it just like that. You had to hear the record as well. You had to know what the beat was saying. And that's what the Beatles did. They started the modern art of popular music. People like Dean Martin, Frank Sinatra, Bing Crosby, Tony Bennett. And I say it in all respect, never succeeded after that because they all stayed back. They refused to go with the flow. They refused to take the challenge of this new sound, which is a new sound. And basically, it's hard to convert from a conventional art to something new. But the kids who were growing up were able to adapt to it. And basically, that's what the Beatles started. They started a new trend in music.
Certainly one of the biggest controversies to ever land at the Beatles' doorstep was John Lennon's controversial remarks made to a London-based journalist that the Beatles were indeed more popular than Jesus Christ. Here John and Paul fend off yet another full frontal assault from the media.
I think that from what my views are, from what I read or observed of Christianity and what it was and what it has been or what it could be, it just seems to me to be shrinking. I'm not knocking it or saying it's bad. I'm just saying it seems to be shrinking and losing contact.
And we all deplore the fact that it is,
nothing better seems to be replacing it, so we're not saying anything about that.
And if you say something that you think may vaguely in a way be helpful, because if it is on the decline in any way, then to say it's on the decline must be helpful.
It's really going on saying, yes, it's all fine, and yeah, we're all Christians and we're all doing this. And we're all not doing it.
And there'll probably be a big resurgence of Christianity now. Might as well, yes.
Mr. Lennon, are you all Christians?
Well, we were brought up, I don't profess to be a practicing Christian. Well, I think Christ was what he was, and if anybody says anything great about him, I believe. But I'm not a practicing Christian like I was brought up to be. I don't have unchristian thoughts.
Was there as much repercussion and reaction to your statements throughout Europe and other countries of the world as there was here in America?
I don't think Europe heard about it. They will now. But it was just England, and I sort of got away with it there as much as nobody took offence and saw through me. And over here, it just, what I said, it went the other way.
Known not only as a top-flight musician and composer, John Lennon also shared deep convictions about the role of the artist in society, the futility of war, and the great need for both inner and outer peace in the world. Here he touches on these and other weighty subjects in a 1969 press conference in Toronto.
And it's like saying, why bother keeping on Christianity because Jesus got killed or something? We don't think people have tried advertising before. We think advertising is it, and if we can start there, if anybody brings out a new product, say pretend Peace is new then, because we've never had it, they start advertising, it's sell, and whatever gimmickry and irrelevancies that are going on during the advert, it's the drink or the car they buy at the end of it, whether there's chicks in it and white horses and snow and all that. The product sells, and we believe in selling,
John, a few months ago you had a campaign going to have a ship in the Mediterranean, a peace ship in the Mediterranean. Is this still...
Well, this is like somebody else's gig, and we're helping him with it. He's in New York now trying to raise money for the ship. We did what we could out of America. We couldn't do much, We could only say, we're with you, and you can put our name on the ad and try and use us as best you can. For his plan is he has the ship. He's got a lot of kids to paint it, and he's in New York, and he needs some kind of transmitter which costs a lot. And I'm not like that with him, because I met him for 5 minutes. I liked him. I believe in his campaign, and we've done what we can for him. He's still in New York, and that's still on.
Last time you were here in Montreal, you mentioned that you had the acorns, which were
Yeah, King Hussein planted his, you'd like to know. He's the only one.
Is this still part of your campaign? The acorn is still...
Yes, we believe acorn is a seed. We'll keep sending them till everybody's planted one, you know. We sent them to all the people, all the world leaders' addresses we could get together. We've had about 20 replies from here and there. I don't know who, so it's no good asking me because I can't remember. But we've had replies saying, yes, thank you. And some just saying, yes, we got it, you know. So the ones who said thank you, we guessed it, sort of peaceniks.
John, have you got anything to say about music? Anything coming up, or is there...
Music, well, we have an album out today, folks. It should have been out 2 weeks ago, but they hustled it out today.
How about the next Beatles album?
Next Beatles album, January. One after that, March or something, you know.
John?
Plenty of product, you know.
I remember you saying sometime...
Ask EMI.
I remember you saying sometime you thought that we'd have peace by the year 2000. Do you still think that?
Well, I don't want to say, I'd sooner say by 1970, you know, and then I believe in that positive thinking bit. So I'll try and knock all the negative thought out. Let's say 1970, and then when it's 70, we say, oh, we're wrong in 1971.
That might be over by 99. 1999.
Optimistic.
I think we get it as soon as people realise that they have the power, and the power doesn't belong to Mr. Trudeau, Mr. Wilson, or Mr. Nixon. That we are the power, the people are the power, you know, and that as soon as people are aware they have the power, then they can have what they want, you know. And if it's a case of, well, they don't know or they don't know what to do, let's advertise to them to tell them that they have an option.
What can they do? Like, what can we do?
They've got the vote, haven't they?
What can we do, yeah.
You know. Well, get it, you know. I mean, they're going to get it in England, you know. I mean, you'll have the vote, you know. You will be the establishment. There's no good attacking it and breaking it down because you'll have to build it up again. That's all we say.
What do you think will happen when the young people will be tired to fight for peace that they won't get?
Well, they have the alternative, you know. You either get tired fighting for peace or you die, you know. That's the alternative.
What do you think of John? What do you think about the statement where he says he hasn't granted any dues because he's simply being used to sell papers?
Who?
Bob Dylan said that in Rolling Stone.
Oh, well, I don't know, you know. Bob's a home-loving lad at the moment, you know.
Will there be a car race in Mosport?
A car race? Is it? I don't know, you know.
It's a racing. I think there's one usually scheduled at that time.
Oh, what's this about car?
There's no race there.
No, there's no race. The race is for peace. It's embarrassing, you know.
Are you still involved in Eastern philosophy as you work in?
Well, I don't know quite what it is, you know. I mean, if I'm involved in anything, I'm involved in Yoko's version of Zen Buddhism, you know. And all those philosophies have good basis and they're right, you know. It's like all the religions are right too. I just haven't the time nor the capability of reading through 2 million years worth of philosophy because the answer is yes and now and all that.
How about meditation?
Meditation, occasionally I use it, you know. It's like anything. I'm not a very good get up in the morning and do your exercise. Meditation is a mental exercise. It works all right. It does all they say it does. Now the thing I use to attain the state that meditation got me to is diet.
Diet.
Yes.
And our mantra is peace, naturally, you know.
Yes, we've adopted that and used peace as the mantra, you know.
Were you in India just recently on holiday?
Yes, we went to Greece and India, yeah.
Your campaign seems so big and so general. Have you not thought of the idea that if you zeroed in on one specific problem in the world, you might find you were more effective?
I don't know. You mean like just say concentrate on the Israeli-Arab war or something like that?
Yes.
You know.
But the world is getting very small.
I don't think it's. I think we have to gather all the positiveness from everywhere and then let them, if it's mental or whatever way, concentrate on each individual case. It's like we believe in prevention rather than cure, and we'd like to be able to concentrate on both. You know, like cure the cancer patient in hospital. But we really are after prevention, you know. It's unfortunate about the people that have got cancer now, but we hope there's enough people we can help or that are helping, that with what we're doing anyway we can concentrate on areas. But we believe in just trying to, maybe it's wrong, you know, but we believe in trying to prevention, you know. We've really got the next generation in mind.
Country rocker Ronnie Hawkins knew all of the Beatles, but shared a particularly close bond with John. In 1969, when the Lennons were crisscrossing the world on their whirlwind campaign to help end the Vietnam War, they stayed with Ronnie on his rural Ontario farm. The Hawk recalls just a bit of the attendant madness of having a Beatle in residence.
Well, I got a phone call from England asking, it wasn't from John, it was from John's right-hand man then, Anthony Fawcett.
Right.
And they asked about if John could stay at the house because they'd just been through on a bed-in. When I met them at Maple Leaf Gardens, they were familiar with some of the old songs I had out in the 50s because I had been to England in the late 50s and 60s and played, and so that was before they'd even gotten into music, you know. Behind me then was nothing but fields. It's all concrete and steel now. But they got out there burning all the papers in between the lithographs, and there was a bunch of them, and they didn't know. And all of a sudden, they got out of control and got into the grass, and then finally somebody yelled, and they had to call the fire department.
I heard John trying to fight the thing with a little bucket.
Yeah, he had a sand. He was just doing anything he could to help, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
But he had a lot of fun. John had an awful lot of fun. I had jiggers and skidoos and stuff out there, right. And evidently he'd never done any of that because I heard later, I was told, that he ordered 3 or 4 and had them sent to his place in England.
Huh.
Oh, we had, I don't know, very few people know about this, but we had people that came, I put security out there, and a bunch of cats come over the fence, just had to be in there, and my security got in a little jackpot and broke some heads, and we got sued over it. But how ignorant can you be? There's no trespassing, and they
obviously want to be alone.
Yeah, they'd open the gates. You know,
what did John think when he heard someone got hurt?
Well, he really hated that. He just said, well, can't you ease up a different way? But there's sometimes some situations, if someone takes a swing at you when you push them back and they hit you, then the cats get hot.
Journalist and Lennon intimate Richie York confided in me the last-minute rigors of organizing John and Yoko's appearance at the Toronto Rock and Roll Revival in 1969.
I happened to be at Apple on a Friday afternoon. I was setting an interview to do with, actually that interview with George, it was on the next Monday. And I just went to John's office to say hello. And Brower and all these guys in Toronto were hustling away on the phone. And he was sort of half interested in doing it, you know, and he wanted to know if the guys were right to do it with, Brower and Walker and so on, and Eden, the whole lot. And I just happened to meet Johnny on the spot, you know. And I said, yeah, these guys are right, let's go on the phone, let's get this together. And we put it together that afternoon, and they left the next morning.
From the very beginning, perhaps the Beatles' most trusted employee and friend was their late road manager, Mal Evans. Apple executive Peter Brown recalled the big man's tragic death at the hands of the Los Angeles police in 1977, and John's somewhat offbeat reaction to the news.
John told me the story when it happened, you know, because I went for tea one day, and John told me, did you know that Mal had been killed? And I didn't know. You know, that he was getting in bad shape, and he was shot by the LAPD, and the fact that, you know, his ashes were lost in the mail. He thought it was ironically amusing, the fact that, you know, that the ashes should be lost. He couldn't help but think that was funny.
Yoko Ono, John Lennon's ever-controversial wife, spoke to me in the Lennons' posh New York apartment in 1983.
I was like most sort of end of 50s, beginning of 60s artistic crowd, getting more and more complex, becoming a little bit out of touch with your own body, shall we say, you know, that sort of bag. And here comes this man who's sort of doing very simple chords most of the time, you know, and saying, what do you really mean? You know, don't give me all this sort of roundabout tiptoeing. I consider myself just normal in a sense, you know. touchy, you know. If somebody says something nasty about me, well, I get hurt, you know. And the way I coped with the situation was almost like a miracle, you know. Part of me was, well, part of me is still in shock. And the other side of me was like a little baby, you know. I felt like I was just turning to be 5 years old, you know. Oh, why did this happen? And I need a big teddy bear or whatever. So I would say that it was just the situation that put me in a situation, and I just coped with it. If you were in that situation, you might have done the same or maybe even better, I don't know. You know. So don't think that that was me. It was just something that's interesting as a human document.
Drummer Steve Holley, Paul McCartney's percussionist in Wings' final lineup, spoke to me some time ago in New York regarding not only Paul's down-to-earth lifestyle, but McCartney's intimate relationships with his wife, the fans, and of course his music.
I think more to the point was that he was open enough to accept anything that was offered. In other words, creatively, yeah. If I'd have come up with a great song, it would have been recorded. The fact of the matter is that he's such a strong, prolific songwriter, and I do write, but not necessarily with that amount of strength. So even when I did come up with a song, 9 times out of 10, I said, well, fine, but I've got this, you know. Well, her thing really is the fact that, you know, obviously she's so close to Paul, and he wants her there for the comfortability of the situation, and she can play the lines on, you know, like single note lines, and she plays pad chord stuff, and it's all pretty much programmed. You know, she's the first person to admit she's no virtuoso keyboard player. I mean, she can't whiz around the board with lightning fingers or solo with the guys when they're just jamming out, but she's capable of learning parts and playing them. I didn't speak to him about I mean, I felt as if I couldn't speak to him. It was too personal and too close, and I wasn't the person to ring up and say, hey, I'm really sorry about John, you know. I'm a great admirer of his lifestyle and the way he runs his life, you know. It's great. The kids are very unspoiled. They go to regular schools. They've all got great attitudes, which I think is a remarkable feat under the circumstances. He never talked about the Beatles in the first. It was almost like a taboo subject in the first year or so that I was with him. As time went past, he started to open up a little bit more, and you know, we had some sort of interesting conversations. But you know, there's a lot of stuff there. You know, I think probably people at the Beatle Fest know more about what happened than he did. You know, to some extent. Perfect gentleman. You know, he goes out of his way to. It doesn't matter who it is. He'll take time. He'll speak to people. You know, he's amazing. I think he was always the one that kept their image like that. You know, he was always the one that went out of his way to shake people's hands, to do this, to do that, you know. John was far more critical of that situation altogether. We started rehearsing the Tug of War album, and then George came into production, and I read in the newspaper that the band had broken up. That was the first I heard about it, and I rang Paul and said, what is this? You know, I just read that Wings is no more. I don't know anything about it. He says, oh yeah, I've been meaning to call you, you know. And it was like, well, I can understand that it was hard for him, you know, but yeah, you know. The way I view the situation now is I had a tremendous opportunity, which I used. I gained an incredible amount of experience and shot a long way up the ladder, credibility-wise.
Of all the many far-out characters that have crossed the Beatles' orbit over the years, JoJo Lane is surely one of the most controversial. As Denny Lane's wife, she had intimate access to the inner workings of Paul McCartney and Wings, as well as ongoing friendly relationships with George Harrison and John Lennon. Here she remembers a starry moonlit night in the Highlands of Scotland, where she shared an evening of intimate conversation with Paul and Linda McCartney. In addition, she also recalls spending New Year's in the company of Paul and his Liverpool family.
So Paul starts getting into the romance, and Linda as well, about how it was when they had Mary and Stella, and how he was by Linda's, you know, bedside the whole time and slept in the hospital, and you don't leave your wife's side, and it's the greatest feeling in the world when you know, see your first child and all that kind of thing.
And the guitars?
Yeah, we did some campfire singing. A couple of the Wildlife Wings records. I'd have to look at the album to remember them. And a couple of Beatles songs. There was one, In My Life, that song I remember singing, In My Life. Mary Had a Little Lamb. Yeah, we had a good old little sing-along. No, Paul sang Linda Had a Little Lamb. That's what it was. Her name was Mary. That's how it came about, the conversation. So, so I'm like really getting into the way he's talking about it and getting all excited, and I felt little Lane kicking in my stomach as Paul's talking, and I was just looking around. I was high, and I'm thinking, what a beautiful atmosphere it was. Paul,
talking to doobies.
Mm-hmm. Paul and Linda, all of us. Paul and Linda were, you know, being so nice. It really was. It was one of the nicest memories of them. Just everybody was relaxed. There was no airs or graces about it all. That, you know, they were like really happy for Denny and I, or I thought they were. It was all of Paul's family, Auntie Ginny, all the people that he mentions in the song "Let 'Em In." Yeah. They were wonderful. I mean, the family, Paul's family, were the best, the most typical English Liverpudlians. Just so you couldn't come from a better family. I mean, the warmth, the soul. And Kate Robbins, who was his cousin, loved me. I mean, I had open arms from all his family. You know, I mean, they, I never got any bad feeling. They thought I was wonderful. I don't think that they I mean, nobody ever said anything, but I felt I was just as welcomed as Linda, if not more, because I could relate to them more and talk to them more. I never really saw Linda ever really speaking to them. She was always just beside Paul, you see. I mean, I mixed with them. I never really saw Linda mixing with his family that much. I mean, she was just, I suppose she probably feels she didn't have to, or she was obviously from another world anyway. But Kate Robbins was an excellent, excellent singer. The memories up in Liverpool was Kate at the piano. I mean, his whole family is so musical. They had a beautiful piano. Just everybody singing around. I mean, I can see them right now just singing Mull of Kintyre. I mean, that's like the family of the Mull of Kintyre. Everybody singing those type of songs, the old English and New Year's songs. And it was beautiful. I was there for the whole, most of the mixing of the band and the run, but Red Rose Speedway, I was there, I would say, for just about it all. And that's why that's my favorite album. Every song, I'm pretty certain I was there for just about every song, just about. And it was just, and I was in the recording session specifically when Little Lamb Dragonfly was, they were doing the harmonies, Denny Sywell. And I was sitting like in a corner. And I remember even singing myself, just the high bit, while in the room. It was just everything, it was the most magical experience of any of the Wings session I had ever been in. And I remember when they kept playing it over again. As you know, it's such a pretty harmony. And Denny made fun of me and told Paul, and Paul smiled, because as they were playing it over, it was so beautiful, I started crying. And I had tears in my eyes, and Denny came over to me, and he kind of went like that, because I was sitting on the floor cross-legged. And as you could hear the harmonies in the back, Little Lamb Dragonfly and all that, he kind of lifted my chin up. He says, "Are you crying?" And I just went like that, and he just said, "You old, I don't know, soppy little girl," or something like that. And he went over and said something to Paul, and Paul just smiled. Denny said, "She's crying, the little girl's crying." He kept doing that. I mean, you know, what can I say? I mean, all the songs, is when they recorded them, you knew they were going to be hits. I mean, they stayed in your mind.
Yeah, well, what was it like in the studio?
Let 'Em In.
Like in the studio?
Oh, wonderful. You know, we were in all the studios, Abbey Road, and of course, the Abbey Road session reminded me of the Let It Be. It was like, here you were, where all the famous pictures were taken. You know, EMI that was a great student. And George Martin was just absolutely always brilliant. He was such a distinguished gentleman.
Best remembered as a down-and-dirty rocker and genteel balladeer, Paul McCartney also has a profound attachment to classical music as well. Here he discusses the creation of his first full-fledged classical work, the Liverpool Oratorio.
Well, one of the things about this, you know, is that while I was writing this with Carl, I was on my world tour. So I was actually doing the two things at the same time. And when I got a couple of months off from the world tour, or weeks or even days, I'd grab a couple of days and keep going there. So it seemed okay to balance. And the two helped each other, really. Doing the sort of rock and roll stuff would keep the classical stuff nice and free and flexible. And doing the classical stuff allowed me to be a bit freer when I was writing some of the kind of pop stuff. I think the bearing it might have on my future work, I think I'd like to do more of it. And I think in the next stuff I'm writing, the pop stuff, the way I've approached this thing with Carl is kind of similar to George Martin and I, how we used to work. So I think that will have a little bit bearing on my next pop album. I think the main thing is that when we started writing, Carl and I started to fall into all my normal tricks, where if you're writing a 3-minute, 5-minute piece, you'll do your first verse, then you immediately look for the second verse, then you immediately look for a chorus, then you immediately look for a middle, you repeat the chorus. There's a kind of formula that most people stick to, with maybe an instrumental section in the middle of it all. And the interesting thing about this was Carl pointed out to me that there didn't have to be any formula. We could do anything we wanted. We could have a verse, then we could go to a completely different tune, and we could go to a completely different key. It's very flexible, the long form. So it was very interesting to write. But I think the basic difference is just that you don't have to stick to any structure. You're a lot freer. You've got more time to explore. First thing I did would probably be round about the time of The Family Way, yeah. Because I've always been interested in music, not just rock and roll. I used to like jazz. I like people like Cole Porter, and I would listen to people like Bach, and like everybody, sort of da 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 da, or Nutcracker Suite, or all the popular classical stuff. So I've been interested in all of that sort of stuff for a while. So I did a couple of things with people like the Black Dyke Mills Band. I did a record with them. That was kind of a little bit away from what I'd done. And then, as you say, I did the soundtrack for a film called The Family Way with George Martin. So I was starting to kind of explore those other areas, just for fun, really. It's very interesting, if you're interested in music, to go outside your own field. I've been in the music business a long time now, and even if you don't know how to write it down, you can't help picking up things. And if you work with great musicians, you see them working, and you just start to understand what's going on. So I think Carl was probably a bit surprised to find out, that I did have a bit of musical knowledge. Now, I don't look like I do, but obviously I've been around quite a while now.
Here Paul remembers the day George Harrison first heard the plaintive strains of McCartney's moving choral work.
He heard a bit. I came round to the house, and George is very interested in all kinds of music, like I am. In fact, he's totally besotted with George Formby at the moment. But that's another story. Anyway, I played him a little bit of this, and I think he liked it, I think he was a bit shocked when a sort of voice came in, hello. Because it is a change for us, for that kind of voice. So it is a little bit of a, culture shock to me, as it was to George. But I'm interested in it, I like it. I think you can get as much emotion with that kind of a voice as you can with what I would call a sort of normal voice.
By now, we all know that Paul McCartney is an inspired songwriter, but how did he actually pen all those songs? It's a well-known fact that he has no formal musical education and can't even read music. But yet, for the last 30 years, he has astonished the world with his well-crafted, deeply tuneful creations. McCartney touched upon the mechanics of working with his muse in a recent Liverpool press conference.
I feel like I've got musical skills just over the years, from just the music I've been involved in. But it's almost a superstition of mine. I've got a feeling that if I start learning how to do it now in the kind of, quotes, the proper way, I'll lose a lot of my freedom. If I'd have known how you're supposed to write a violin solo, I think I would have written a very different one from this. But I have no idea what you're supposed to do, so I just take chances that maybe somebody else wouldn't do.
Always a great supporter of charities over the years, Paul McCartney has recently involved himself in a very special campaign, especially dear to the former Beatles' heart. Paul talked about the project at a recent press conference.
A couple of years ago, I came back to my old school, which is called the Liverpool Institute, which is near the cathedral there. And it had been closed down by the council, and it was in a pretty bad state. So I was just coming on a kind of nostalgic trip to have a look at it and just remember my old school. In fact, this is where we used to come for our speech days, the school. We'd have all my school out there, with the parents up there. I walked up on here to get a prize once, knees trembling. But no, I showed him round the school because what we're trying to do is save it so as it doesn't fall down. And the idea that we've had is to create a kind of a fame school, a performing arts school, which I think is perfect for Liverpool because there's so much talent in this city. And what happened was I met a black guy after the Toxteth riots. And he said to me, he said, you know what this city needs? He said, it needs a fame school. And it actually quite interested me, the idea. I thought, yeah, that's maybe possible. We put the idea of saving my old school together with making a new school. And we're now getting to the stage where I've been this morning showing the Minister for Inner Cities, Michael Portillo, round the school, trying to get him interested, trying to get the government interested in renovating it all. And number one, to save it for the past, because it was built in 1825, and you don't want to lose buildings like that, I don't think. And also to really make something very exciting for the future.
Geoffrey Giuliano is the author of some 30 internationally best-selling books on the Beatles, John Lennon, and other iconic musicians of the 1960s. In 2006, his book, Paint It Black, The Murder of Brian Jones, was made into a film by Stephen Woolley and Nick Powell entitled Stoned, The Wild and Wicked World of Brian Jones. It remains a cult classic and the only film bio of the Rolling Stones. Giuliano is also a veteran journalist, having written for dozens of high-profile newspapers and magazines, including The Sunday People, The Daily Mail, The News of the World, The Mail on Sunday, Playgirl, and Rolling Stone. A noted film actor, Giuliano starred in such movies as Vikingdom, Scorpion King 3, Jules Verne's The Mysterious Island, The Fifth Execution, Far Cry 3, Fire Fire Desire, among many. In addition, he hosted the long-running North American syndicated radio series, Geoffrey Giuliano's Roots of Rock, for 5 years, as well as pioneering the audiobook industry in the 1990s by authoring, narrating, and producing over 250 original, non-book-based, interview-driven productions. Giuliano's publishers included Random House, HarperCollins, Delta Entertainment, Durkin Hayes, Playaway Audio, Speechworks, and B&B Audio, among dozens more internationally. In 1998, Random House acquired his firm Tribute Audio, for which Giuliano acted as CEO and publisher for 5 years. His best-selling audiobook, That Fateful Night, True Stories of Titanic Survivors in Their Own Words, was nominated for a Grammy. In 2014, Geoffrey Giuliano founded Icon Editions and G2 Media Arts to market his updated works as well as publish new projects. As a visual artist, Geoffrey has been showing in galleries across America since 1977, garnering impressive reviews. His first professional assignment was designing several T-shirts for The Who's Pete Townsend in 1976. Geoffrey also designed and illustrated many of his original rock biographies for the biggest publishers in the world from 1984 to 2006, as well as designing for his pioneering record label, Samba Records, in the mid-1990s. From 2006 to 2011, Geoffrey was also the primary designer for the French fashion house Cotai. When Giuliano first conceived of creating his own literary imprint, Icon Editions, he became responsible for illustrating and designing 35 book covers, several hundred CDs, DVDs, as well as dozens of promotional posters, and eventually an entire collection of exclusive fashion and art. The expansive Design by Giuliano brand grew out of Geoffrey's impressive commitment to the arts and is the culmination of a lifetime's work by an extraordinarily talented and determined Renaissance man.